the United States first and foremost, and Russia. Americans are on the ground. Americans are providing the so-called intelligence, though it's not very intelligent. We have NATO forces throughout Ukraine. Americans are picking the targets, managing the weapon systems, of course, needless to say, financing the war as well. So this is a war, not even a proxy war, as it's sometimes called, between the U.S. and Russia. This is a war between the United States and Russia, in which Ukraine is doing the preponderance of the dying. Nothing happens in Ukraine without the U.S. approval or the U.S. guidance. Now, let's also say that this recent incursion into Kursk, this is Russian pre-1991 territory, is most likely going to prove to be a disaster. So this is not only a NATO-led operation and a U.S.-led operation, but one that is most likely to fail. It's most likely to fail for two reasons. One is that Ukraine has pulled key parts of its remaining military forces.
All right, folks, I'm still backstage. As you keep watching, the show going to start sharp 1 o'clock. But there are some key words in here that is being used in here. I want you, or I urge you, to pay attention to. So we're going to use most of those words. So I want you to pay keen attention to some of the things that he's going to say in this video, and that's why I'm playing it, because it's going to be very important as we dive into the discussions. So what is going on in Ukraine? I want you to pay keen attention to what he's saying in here, okay? And it relates to also what we are going to discuss about the African continent and what that U.S. Congressman Todd Young said with the congressional committee hearing that they had. So I want you paying attention to what he's saying and some of the words he's using here as it relates to the imperialists. All right.
Both equipment and the most important brigades to this area, and thereby essentially vacated vulnerable areas in other points of the contact line. So in this sense, Russia is already making very significant, very rapid breakthroughs in the preceding contact line in the Donbass, in Pokrovsk in particular, an area that is extremely important from a logistical point of view. And so Ukraine has already taken away a great many of its defenses. Second, the incursion itself into Kursk is likely to prove to be limited, not to have strategic effects, and is likely to be defeated. So the end result of this is probably to accelerate Ukraine's overall military defeat. But the fact that you have NATO forces on the ground doing the fighting, doing the intelligence, the surveillance, the guidance, the management of the weapon systems, and so forth. None of that is a surprise. All of that is very well known.
So you have an invasion into Russia financed in large part by Americans using American equipment, American intelligence, much of the American equipment manned by Americans. A, is it fair to say the United States invaded Russia? And B, how would we react if the same thing happened up in Alaska?
Registering to vote only takes 2 minutes or less. The same amount of time it takes to brush your teeth, respond to that text, or check social media. Take a minute or two and make sure you have a plan to vote this year.
Those fake ads really drive you mad, huh? The game looks so fun in the ads, but when you download it, it's a totally different game. That's crazy, right? But today, I finally found a game that's exactly the same as it's shown in the ads.
Oh.
They're gonna pay for this. Yeah, nice! Oh, yes, I know where the best loot is hidden. Look at that alt!
The whole point of American behavior is that we never ask the question, ever, how would we react on the other side? The whole point of American foreign policy is the belief by these officials that we can do what we want with impunity against any norm, standard, or international law, principle, vote of the UN Security Council, treaty, or anything else that we would say would limit the behavior of others. After all, the most basic point that the United States has said for 201 years since the enunciation of the Monroe Doctrine to the rest of the world, stay out of the Western Hemisphere. We regard any incursion in the Western Hemisphere anywhere. That could be from the southern tip of Tierra del Fuego to our immediate neighborhood as an infringement on U.S. security. But when we say, but of course we have the right to push NATO right up to Russia's borders, put in missile systems wherever we want, engage Georgia in the Caucasus region as a, quote, North Atlantic partner as part of NATO. Oh, that's our right. So everything about American foreign policy is built on hypocrisy from beginning to end. And then we can't understand why that's just a little bit annoying to others and gets us into perpetual war.
Switching gears, I'm going to run a clip of Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir leading a few thousand Zionists into the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He stops and speaks to the camera. He speaks in Hebrew. Both his words and the translation are very fast. I'm going to do my best to keep up with them for the benefit of those who are listening to this program rather than watching it. And then I'll ask you the significance of the invasion of this mosque in East Jerusalem. We are at the Temple Mount on Tisha B'Av. Today we commemorate the destruction of the temple, but we must also honestly acknowledge that there is significant here regarding change, the sight of Jews praying. As I said, our policy is to permit prayer, but I'll say something else. We must win this war. We must win, not go to summits in Doha or in Cairo, but defeat them, bring them to their knees. That's the message. We can defeat Hamas, bring it to its knees. How counterproductive is something like this at a time like this?
Well, this is one of the most sensitive areas in the world for Muslim populations all over the world. This is one of the holiest sites for Muslims, and it is absolutely supposed to. And that situation has gone on for decades. So what we are seeing now is just more extreme and violent, and I would say, according to international law, genocidal behavior by Israel, but of a kind that Israel has been carrying out for decades. When you have that kind of behavior, what kind of agreements can be reached? This is not a government, I mean the Netanyahu government, that is looking for peace. This is a government that is looking for complete domination over millions of people, up to and including killing them when they resist. So this is what this is about. And I think the Biden White House is completely complicit in this. This is a disaster of U.S. foreign policy. Let's be clear. All of this is predictable, knowable, and Biden at every turn, and the Congress, which is even more disgraceful, if one can say it, giving more than 50 standing ovations to Netanyahu when he appeared before the Congress recently, is a complete accomplice to these massacres. So how could one expect something to come out of this? But as I say, it profoundly threatens Israel's own survival because it is so reckless, so extreme, so illegal, based on one ruling after the next of the International Court of Justice, that Israel finds itself entirely isolated from all except the U.S. foreign policy and political class.
To what extent
people are aghast?
This is, I'm going to go right into your wheelhouse now. To what extent can diplomacy be expected to succeed in this environment? Or stated differently, will there ever be a two-state solution without the imposition of it by an outside force?
Well, the U.S. position, which is a completely phony position, not just a failed position, but a phony position, is that there must be an agreement between the two parties. But this is utterly absurd, Orwellian, because it means that Israel can veto the basic political rights of the Palestinian people, despite the repeated calls by the United Nations, both the General Assembly and the UN Security Council, and the repeated decisions of the International Court of Justice, that Israel's behavior is plainly, flatly, brutally illegal. But the White House position, the Israel lobby imposed position, if you will, or the one that it has delivered into the mouths of American officials, is that, the two-state solution, we're in favor, but it must be agreed by the two parties. That's nonsense. It must be put in place by the United Nations over the kicking and screaming of Israel, if that's how it's going to be. Because Israel has to follow international law, and international law needs to be enforced by the UN Security Council. And the rulings of the International Court of Justice need to be enforced. Now, of course, every time we speak, I emphasize the fact that the US foreign policy is despicable and disgraceful. And Biden is one of the worst presidents of modern history in this. Shameful, lying, arrogant, and solving no problems whatsoever. Am I mincing my words?
No, not at all. But your words are eminently defensible.
The point I'm making is that we know what the answer needs to be. The whole world knows what the answer needs to be. And it can be that way because the UN has, under the UN Charter, all of the power that it needs to put this solution into place. It has that power. The United States remains the lone veto. Not because the American people want that, but because the Israel lobby has been able to get American officials to raise their hand to veto peace repeatedly. But I believe that this is short-lived.
Let me just stop you.
Well,
Netanyahu is obviously today.
If you have been to my channel before, you know that I talk a lot about website design. Bluehost has a
We commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Conventions of 1949. The United States reaffirms our steadfast commitment to respecting international humanitarian law and mitigating suffering in armed conflict. We call on others to do the same. Perhaps the greatest lie he's ever told, Jeff.
He's a stunning failure, and we see these failures on display every day. It's hard to imagine because there have been so many disastrous secretaries of state, but he certainly ranks among the biggest disasters. It's not even worth listening to the words because, of course, it's not even close to worth listening to the words. They're completely meaningless. They have no bearing whatsoever on actual U.S. policy at any moment.
What is your best judgment as to Iran's response to the assassination in Tehran? A pinprick, a major incursion? Iran alone or Iran with Hezbollah financed by Russia?
As long as Israel maintains this grotesque extremism and this provocative show of extremism, as Ben-Gvir's walked through Al-Aqsa Mosque today, we can be sure that at one point or another, there will be a massive regional war because Israel is intent on provoking it. And we don't have, it seems, in the United States, the wisdom in our political class to stop this. So I don't know whether it will be today or this week or next week, but what we have is a completely lawless and renegade or rogue state of Israel, and the United States bound to the hip at every moment with it, no matter what its behavior, whether it is bombing and killing innocent civilians, starving hundreds of thousands to the point of death, assassinating counterpart peace negotiators or ceasefire negotiators in foreign capitals, bombing diplomatic facilities as Israel did in Damascus, and then the U.S. stands in the Security Council to block any kind of censure, which, by the way, is part of the Geneva Conventions not to attack other diplomatic facilities. So as long as this kind of recklessness, lawlessness, and flagrant boasting of unlimited extremism goes on, we will have a disastrous war. It's clear. Israel's going to keep doing whatever it can to provoke it, it seems. It wants to draw the U.S. into this regional war, which, because Iran has its allies, Russia and China and others, could turn into a world war, could turn into a nuclear war, is something that we should be working every moment, which is always revving. And it's revving right now. And the job of the President of the United States is to stop it by putting his foot on the brakes so we don't have World War III. And this is the drama that we're in right now, because we have, both in Ukraine and in Gaza and Israel, we have the makings of World War III, because we have completely reckless countries, reckless governments that are doing whatever provocation they can to create a wider war. Ukraine, which is losing on the battlefield, sent its drones just in the last couple of days to attack directly the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and set one of the cooling towers on fire. Then, of course, some stupid lies about it, but everything is known, everything is understood. But where is the United States telling Ukraine, don't attack a nuclear power plant? You think Blinken is saying this? Not that I can see. The President of the United States, anybody? No, because we don't have the makings of even the most basic sanity of our foreign policy right now. The war machine revs, and the president is who knows where.
It's not just the president, Professor Sachs, it's the Congress as well. Look at their disgraceful embrace of Netanyahu, which our friend Scott Ritter has described as, what do you expect? The audience was bought and paid for.
But that's the point with the Congress. You know, we legalized mass corruption, billions and billions and billions of dollars changing hands for what purpose? To reelect these people who do nothing for our security, but they have a self-governing machine. They take the money, they use it for their reelection, and they give a green light to the war machine. And this is what we have right now. It's
But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing the Tampa market. Staggering rise. But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing the Tampa market. Staggering rise.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the Horn of Africa.
All right, Good afternoon, folks. Once again, this is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series, aspect of WCC, Political Education. This is where we come and learn about issues affecting the Black community, the Black nations, and the Black liberations, and the African liberation. I mean, everything. This is where we come, we expose the imperialists. One of the place, let me be precise, one of the place we do expose the imperialists, and one of the place we do give directions to African people and to bring awareness of what we need to do to be ahead of the imperialists. Because look, like yesterday it was discussed on the show, right? And numerous times we have been saying it. Whether you like it or not, Africa is at war. African people are at war. And we have been at war for the past 900 years. We have been at war in some other way, right? Now, from the last video or from the video you just watched from the introduction, right? I usually do it as a refresher to see where we are heading. From what you just watched, right? The last statement from Jerry, by the way, Jerry's he's an economist, U.S. economist, right? So his last word, he said, the United States Congress legalized mass corruptions. The United States Congress, the United States government, the U.S. government, all right? The White House of the U.S. government, right? The Capitol House of the U.S. government, where you have the United States Constitution, right? They legalized mass corruption. What that means, what he was trying to say is the United States is the number one. When he said mass corruption, pay attention. What he meant was, or is, the United States is the leading, the number one, the father of corruptions in the world. And that is why he described it as the mass. That means the U.S. legalized corruption. When he said mass, the U.S. legalized corruption. The U.S. is the father of corruption. The U.S. is the engine of corruption. The engine that can move a car. Without an engine, that car cannot move, right? So you have the engine to make the car to move. You have the engine to tell which part of the car that need repair. For example, you drive your car, you see light on the dashboard. It's coming from the engine to tell you this need to be fixed, or else it will create a future problem if you can fix it now. So the United States is the engine for corruption. The United States is the engine, the mother, the father. The democracy for corruption is the U.S. So for each chance you do or you go about corruption, it becomes mass. Now, what make it mass? This is where we break down things. What make it mass is she's very crafty. She is very, very crafty in what she do, right? What that mean is when you hear U.S. foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy. By the way, for each time you draft a policy, for each time you draft a policy to be used in another nation, that means that policy that you are just drafted, it is not in line of that nation constitution. It is not in line of the agreement of that nation to which you are carrying your selfish policy. Now, if it is not in the interest of the people or the nation or that the constitution, right, of that people, what then going to happen? You have to influence people, because if something it is not in the interest of me, if something is not in the interest of my community, what you going to do? You have to influence people in order for your interest to be protected. Mass corruption. Now, in doing that, you have to go to infiltrate the people system, bribe people, pay people, all right? Or if the people in that region or the leader do not agree, what you then do? You put sanction on that person. What you then do? You go and freeze their account. What you then do? You tell the World Bank, do not give them money, even though for someone who don't believe in the World Bank. But this is what the United States foreign policy do, and that's why they are the father of mass corruptions. So who gave the United States to go to other nations to tell them about corruption, how to eliminate corruption, how to minimize corruption, when they are the father, when they pay for corruption, when they create corruption? It didn't come from me. It came from a U.S. economist who said the United States Congress, the United States government, the center of the U.S. government is corrupt. And in fact, they are the father of corruption because they legalize it. Is it a lie? Look at the African continent. The United States decide who to go after and who not to go after. And when you look at the African continent, the United States have never been on the side of true African leaders, of true democracy. That's why they are corrupt. The United States had never been on the side of an established government from the people, but the people of the people. The U.S. have never ever supported such government. Look at the African continent. The U.S. have always been on the side of dictator, tyrant, killers, because those are the people that protect the U.S. foreign policy. Not in the interest of the people. That's why the United States Congress legalized corruption. That's why the U.S. is corrupt. The number one corrupt nation in the world is the United States because they legalize corruption. And this is why we are here today to talk about the U.S. Congress. So, folks, today's topic, it says, U.S. Senator Todd Young and U.S. Congress, demon, D-E-M-O-N-S, demon, the devil. Now, as we said before, and we will keep saying it, demon, it just means one who deceives. Devil, it just means one who deceives you. You are a demon. You are a devil. U.S. Senator Todd Young and U.S. Congress, demon, came out as they talk about the exploitation of Africa, as they embrace the exploitation of Africa. They discuss that the form of exploitation from the past, African people have come to realize that the United States Congress, the United States government have been lying to them. The United States government have been corrupting them. So they sat down in a committee hearing and said, we need to come out with different strategy on how to continue to exploit the African resources for the benefit of the American economy. I didn't say it. That's what they say. We are just responding to the obvious. And we are just giving the obvious reasons to the obvious statement and behavior and attitude of a corrupt system of the United States. Let's continue here. Let's look at the first article. Let's look at this first article. Now, this first article says Senate Influential ship. Senate influential slip walk it back after saying U.S. must keep exploiting Africa. U.S. must keep exploiting Africa. By the way, the head of the news article says he slipped, S-L-I-P. He slipped walk, right? The truth of the matter is he did not slip. He did not make mistake. He knew what he was saying because he knows exactly this is the doing of a corrupt system. Like the US and Europe, the imperialists. Let's continue here. Let's see this article. Very street article. By the way, this is the devil. This is the United States congressional devil. The United States senator devil and demon. Look at his face. Look at his face. Can't you tell his face look like demon? Can't you tell his face look devilly? Look at his face. Look at the demons in his eyes. Look at the devil in his eyes. Look at his face. Do you see any kind of humanity in this face? Or you see devil? And by the way, this devil, this demon, he served on a foreign committee relation of the U.S. So they are the one that dropped policy to negatively affect African nations. And nation they call terror. This demon, this devil. Look at his face. Complete devil. Let's continue here. He said here, how can we foster bringing American capital and expertise and standard to Africa so we can keep exploiting? So we can keep exploiting. And therefore he said, so that we can keep exploring where we can get these minerals. Where we can get these minerals. First of all, let's break this down. Now, for those of you so-called Negro Africans, for those of you so-called slave-minded Africans, for those of you who know the system, the corrupt system of the U.S. foreign policy, but yet then decide to pay a blank ear because you are being bought or you are being given some kind of a loose coins, and you go ahead to accept these things. You are the people. This message is for today. Now, he said where we can explore and get these minerals. So, when you sit on the African continent or in any African nations and then talk about we need American investors, we need European investors, we need American experts or expertise, we need European expert or expertise. Here it is. They are telling you, we are bringing experts, right? You need experts, right? Okay. So they are telling you, we are bringing experts, but the experts that we are bringing, they are experts who are coming to make sure to get your raw material, not to produce your raw material in Africa, not to build factory, not to give you opportunity, but the experts that we are going to send, these are people who will come and manipulate your system. These are people that we will send through our foreign policy agenda. And when they come, they will be experts in manipulating your mind so that we can get your mineral. So that's why he says, so that we can get the mineral. That is what they want. So these are the kind of people that have been creating policy. And by the way, these idiots, they just drafted another policy. He's part of the idiots, the many congressional idiots that drafted a policy to send to the World Bank, to send to African nations. For example, another, how they call it, neo-colonialist, Ruto, who accepted it for his people to pay taxes, even when they go buy bread, so that those taxes can be used to pay back the American dollar, the European dollar, the European, how they call it, IMF, the American IMF. And that's why you saw the protests in Kenya. So these are the kind of people that drafted or that draft those kind of a policy. And that's the kind of expertise. And now what they did here is they drafted that policy, that taxation policy on African nations, and then they educated, okay, they educated some Europeans, some American, and then send them in those nations they call third world. Now, those people have gone in those nations and they start teaching them about financial literacy. Now, the financial literacy is not about to teach you to how to become an entrepreneur, how to take matter into your hands, right? But they are there to teach you, to convince you that the best method for your economic system to grow is to pay taxes. And then that's how the government is going to get money to carry on development. And in your mind, you will think it's true things because, yeah, who don't need development? Who didn't need a government to raise money to carry on development? So right there, you agree. But what happened is it was late. Just how in 1884 Berlin Conference, these so-called people sat down and trained missionary. And told them, when you go to the African continent, do not tell them about love. They know love. Do not tell them about thou shalt not cover your neighbor's wife. They know that. Do not tell them about sin. They know what sin is. But tell them, slave, obey your master. Just like your heavenly Father. Slave, obey your master just like your heavenly Father. But again, that is contradiction, because it is the same heavenly Father that said, thou shalt not have no other God before me. So how can the same Bible say again, slave, obey your master just like, obey your master just like your heavenly Father. But here then, the heavenly Father is saying, thou shalt not have no other man before me. Thou shalt not bow down to no man other than me. So how can you tell us, obey me, bow down to me, just like you bow down to your heavenly Father? Contradiction. So those are the kind of things they taught in the Bible. Those are the kind of things they put in the Bible. They put it there. But do you see the contradiction? Thou shalt not worship no man. But they came to you, they told you, worship me. That's what the Bible says. Worship your master just like your heavenly Father. So in 2024, they did the same thing by training missionary and then sending them to Africa and to those nations they call third world to manipulate their mind about taxation. There's nothing wrong with paying taxation, but will it be used for the benefit of the people? Absolutely not. There is nothing wrong with exploitation. That make that clear. But if you exploit the resources, where it is going. If we explore the resources, where the resources being used for the benefit of the people. And now, if it can, that's what makes exploitation dangerous. Let's continue here. So America have no good intention for Africa. We're saying it. And that's what they are doing. We are not making our things or coming out with opinion. Now, in the imperialists, for the imperialists, Africa belongs to them. And this is what Abraham Tuare said. And that's why they hate Abraham Tuare. And that's what made the United States the #1 corrupt nation in the world. They never ever follow any African leaders who need true democracy and true freedom, who need their worth, or who love his or her people. America will never ever support you to love your people. Let's continue here. The slave came at a time when West African states have formed an anti-colonial alliance. The military leader of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali have created a confederation called the Alliances of Sahel State. The countries broke away from the Economic Community of West African States. The Economic Community of West African States, as we all know, it is a colonial entity, a colonial institution, serving as a neo-colonialist for the interests of the colonialists. All right? So this nation broke away from the Economic Community of West Africa State or West African State, which their leader viewed as a tools of Western colonial power. Let's continue here. Burkina Faso leader Abraham Tuare is far right in his critique. Let's continue here. What he mean by far right? Now, and these are the reasons, these are the things that made the United States Congress to bring out the demon. These are the things that made the demon to come out. The demon in the U.S. Congress to come out. The devil in the U.S. Congress to come out. And they keep coming out. I mean, how long we have talked about this? The last time we talked about my guess, another demon in the U.S. Congress. Let's continue here. What made them to keep coming out, to keep showing themselves? These people, look, they don't have no good intention for Africa. Their intention is to keep exploring Africa and to make sure Africa is in a downward positions as they continue to exploit. You know what Adam Smith said? The man to whom I don't respect, because it was Adam Smith that gave the blueprint of US and Europe on how to control the slave. So don't get it twisted. When you see people like Nana Akufo-Addo acting as slave, because Adam Smith gave a blueprint to the US and to Europe. When you see William Ruto acting like a slave, it is because Adam Smith gave the US and Europe, the colonizer, the imperialists, the enslaver. Adam Smith gave them the blueprint on how to control the slave. And that is why a slave like William Ruto went and sat there in the White House where the United States president said, and then what happened? The United States president went and stood behind him and then drew the spirit of an African man, because Joe Biden stood on top of him, his hand here, and drew his spirit as a powerful African man. And then hold on, folks. Let me respond to this call quick. Let's continue here. So William Ruto sat down there, right, as a slave, like a slave, while Joe Biden directed him what to do. So he felt that, yeah, if I can sit in the US seat today, the highest seat, the office of the United States President, I am setting down in here, then that means we are in the same category. But that was how Adam Smith told them to do if you want to continue exploiting Africa. If you want to make the slave to think that he's not slave. But mentally he's slave, but physically, you may not be beating him, you may not have chain on him, you may not force him to go to the plantation, but psychologically, mentally, he is ill, he's slave. He will do accordingly to what you want him to do. And because someone like Abraham Tuwari is saying, I cannot be a slave psychologically, I cannot be a slave mentally, they don't like him. The most corrupt nation in the world, it is the US. Now let's continue here. This is Abraham Tuwari speaking. He said, or he says, these imperialists have just one clutch in their hands. Africa as an empire of slaves. Africa as an empire of slaves. That's how they see Africa. This is how they see Africa. For them, he went as far as saying, Africa belongs to them. Our land belongs to them. Our subsoil belongs to them. They have never changed that framework. Even today, Abraham Tuwari, and I quote from him. So then, the US Congress, in their delusional mind, as they continue to hallucinate, thinking that in what other way that they will come to convince us, we will fall for it. Knowingly, we know their intention. And that's what Nkrumah said. Never ever sleep on the imperialists because they are never asleep. Let's continue here. The goal of the alliance of Shahid state are to bring in a new currency. This is Abraham Tuwari speaking, right? Are to bring in a new currency, the Shahid. That's the name of the currency, the Shahid. Build communications and energy infrastructure. Invest in agriculture and energy sector. Industrialized and allowed free movement of pricing, all right, between Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. The final aim is to federalize into one sovereign state. So, what you see here, that the United States and Europe do not want, the final state of the AES, they're going to come on one federal government, one federal head of state, one federal constitution, one federal army, one federal government, one federal currency, and one identity. No more Burkina Faso, no more Mali, no more Niger, no more charging. But they will come on one banner and move within interstates. And the US seeing this as a powerful move. They do not like this. Europe seeing that as a powerful move. They do not like this. So they have to go back to their drawing table to plan on what to do. Let's continue. We're going to come to the video, folks. But we're laying down the premises. Because Nkrumah said these folks, these imperialists are never asleep. 24/7, they are studying. They are reading us. They are looking at our movement. And even predicting the next. Because they study us, then we study them. Let's continue here. One example of neocolonialism is Niger uranium. One example of neocolonialism is Niger uranium. In France, the former high colonial of Niger, uranium from uranium from Niger power 1 in 3 light bulb. But in Niger, 84% of people do not even have access to electricity. These are the kind of things that U.S. foreign policy is based on. These are the kind of things that European foreign policies are based on. A nation that is creating uranium, that power the West, that power every household in the West, that gave them a livelihood of life, a great atmosphere of life. But a nation that produced it, 84% of its people have no access to electricity. That's the thing that Jeffrey talked about. The United States Congress legalized mass corruption. And in it, when this happened, when the Nigerian took over, the United States backed France because she support or legalized mass corruption. The United States did not say, no, France, this is wrong. How can the nation that supply electricity to the West, 84% of its people live without electricity? This is not right. I thought the U.S. supposed to be on the side of Niger. No, but the U.S. was on the side of France, and then to equal, we will give you ammunition to go to Niger and wage war on Niger and make sure Bazoum should be reinstilled. A leader that is not for the people, of the people, and by the people. A leader that the people rejected massively. A leader that the people outcasts. But the United States said, we need an outcast government in power. I thought the U.S. said, it is a nation that listens to the voice of the people. Why didn't they listen to the Nigerian? Because she is a nation that is known for mass corruption. Mass destruction. Now, when I say mass corruption, it also means destruction. Mass destruction. Mass looting. Let's continue here. We will continue to expose them as we bring out their video, why they are doing these things. Let's continue here. In June 2024, Niger military government revoked the lesson of France, state-owned multinational uranium, to mine uranium at one of the world's largest mines in Niger. And the uranium is one of the world's most leading and powerful, entity in the world. All right, that mine minerals in Africa. So I thought the U.S. that served as a nation of humanity should go to France and charge these people. I thought the U.S. supposed to go to Niger and do investigation and say, no, France, how can you do this? This company need to pay reparation to Niger. You need to empower Niger. I thought Barack Obama, or I thought Joe Biden should be on the side of the Nigerian. I thought they said they believe in the voice of the people. So that means they are liars. Let's continue here. Let's continue here. They say, what is clear is that we must envision a future where we share global resources, that we take huge public investment in efficiencies and renewable energy. This is not the U.S. Congress talking. No, this is Africa. This is the Sahel state. This is not the U.S. Congress. Okay, let me make that clear. Now, what is clear is that these are the view. The statement here are the view of the Sahel nation. What is clear is that we must envision a future where we share global resources. That means what I was saying here is, if America want our resources, America somehow too got resources. They got technology or some other thing that we can gain from them too. So we take, they take, but they can't come and take and then empower their economy or their empire, and then they don't give back to, or they live up beyond. So if they want anything from us, by all means, we got something, or they got something that we want to. So it should be like that. It shouldn't be one way. So that's the view of the Sahel. This is not the U.S. talking. Let's continue here. What is clear is that we must envision a future where we share global resources, that we take huge public investment in efficiency and renewable energy, of which Africa will be a solar hub. Africa has 60% of the world solar resources, yet a generation of that energy stand at only 1%. Only 1%, and according to the National Geographic Society. So if we hold 60% of the world solar resources, why should only 1% be given to Africa? Why Africa should only benefit from 1%? The rest of the 59% go to the West. So what Africa is getting in return? Nothing. And these are the concerns of the Sahel nation, and they are taking a stand to which they are taking. Now, then that we have seen the side of Africa, then that, in fact, let me make this clear, not Africa, because we have these bunch of fools, some of them in Africa there. Now that we have seen the side of the Sahel, because the decision of the U.S. Congress are based on the decision of the Sahel region, are based on the leader in the Sahel region. The decision of the U.S. Congress is not because of what Nana Akufo-Addo is doing or what Tinubu is doing. No. So let me take this out here. Now that you are saying what those nations in the Sahel region need for their people, right? Let's see the response of the U.S. Now, this was a committee hearing. So there are a lot of things we're going to dissect. When I came across this video, even though other people have spoken about it, but I went deep to really to find the source of it, right? And I was able to get it. So it is not just the statement of one person, which is this demon called Senator Tor Young. There are other people in that were in our committee, and what they suggested as well. That's what we're going to talk about. But the reason why a lot of people focus on Tor, because he is a senator, so he stood up to be the one to be pointed at. But every one of them that were in our building, in our committee hearing, they are all demons, they are all devil. And that's how we're going to address them as it is. So let's watch.
Importance of having
Senator Young.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to pull a bit on that thread about the importance of having ambassadors in place. It's unbecoming of a great power. It is indeed embarrassing to our professionals like Secretary Campbell and to members of Congress alike, and it's injurious to our foreign policy. So if we can't somehow persuade colleagues to
folks, we're going to be breaking it down. So what he's trying to say here is, it's embarrassing that the U.S. foreign policy is failing. So what we need to do to bring back the U.S. foreign policy, the U.S. interest, he's not looking at the damages of the U.S. foreign policy or the damages the U.S. foreign policy have caused. He's not looking at that. He's not looking at that. He's not blaming himself, but he's blaming people who have come to recognize that the U.S. foreign policy is dangerous, is demonic, is chaotic. He's blaming those people who are rejecting the U.S. foreign policy. He's not looking at the view of those people, no.
To use to operate within the existing rules. Maybe we need to change the rules. It's something that's been discussed for a long period of time. I know a number of my colleagues on the committee agree, but I just encourage them and others who are listening to let's give this another run as we approach year's end and see if we can improve this situation moving forward. Mr. Secretary, I'm so grateful for your service and your accessibility. Thank you for all you're doing and all you've done to serve our country. The PRC continues to be defined as a developing country, defined by international financial institutions, development banks. This hampers.
So let's look at his body language. Developing country, right? Whatsoever he called it is being defined by World Bank or whatsoever as developing country. And when he said that, you saw his body language. In his body language, what it entails is that if these people develop, whether consciously, whether mentally, whether physically, whether spiritually, if they develop, whether technologically, whether if they develop, that means we lose everything. Look at his body language as he speaks. That means we lose everything. So technologically, we cannot allow them to develop. Mentally, we cannot allow them to develop. Psychologically, we cannot allow them to develop. Physically or spiritually, we cannot allow them to develop. Look at his body language.
Our ability to get China to pay its fair share of contributions to multilateral institutions. It ensures their access to generous loans and financial terms from these self-same institutions that they shouldn't have. And it presents a normative challenge.
Our ability to provide financial assistance, to create institutions that they should not have. It ain't come from me. That they should not have. Now you wonder why when the West, when IMF gave you money, they gave you limitation on how and where to use this money. Did you see that? You heard it. Now you wonder why when they gave you money, they come and put limitation on where to use it, how to use it, and who to use this on or for. which sector to use that money. If it is a sector that are going to empower and build your country or your economy, they will tell you, don't use it there. Our ability to give them financial assistance to create infrastructure that they should not have. You heard it. Let's continue.
They refuse to demonstrate the leadership that a global power would. So they want all the benefits of being a global power, but they don't want to put forward the same sort of work and resources.
Now, our ability to give them money, right? They want to empower their nation or their economy. They want to compete with us. They want to be on a global stage. They want to be superpower, but they do not want to listen to what we will tell them or what we are telling them. They do not want to be slave. Now, where this is going, this statement is not going to Nana Akufo-Addo, because as far as we're concerned, Nana Akufo-Addo is their slave. Tinubu is their slave. William Ruto is their slave. Where this is going to the Sahel nation. It's going to Abraham Traore. It's going to Assimi Goïta. These statements are going to those people. They do not want to listen to us, but they want to be in power. They want to have a great nation, great institution. They want to take matter into their hands. They want to compete with us. They want to build their system. They want to be superpower. They want to have a seat in the UN. But they do not want to listen to us. You heard that? Let's continue.
That we would expect of a global power. So what do we do about this? How are we trying to deal with the hypocrisy of they're not really a developing country, but they claim that status? And are there steps that we can take to here in Congress or within the administration?
Now, he asked a question up to them. Okay, we have played the game for so long, right? We have played the game for so long. In a nutshell, as I'll just put it, right? What he's trying to say here is, we have played, the US have played the game for so long. The lies, the deceit for so long. Now, these people don't want to listen to us. I mean the freedom fighter. I'm not talking about Tinubu or Nana Akufo-Addo or Macky Sall or Al-Assad. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about people, okay, like Burkina Faso, like the Sahel nation. This man here is saying to the United States Congress or committee hearing for foreign relations or foreign policy, now that we have played the game, we have played the devil advocate, now that we have lied to them, and they have come to understand that we are liars, they have come to understand that we deceive them, right? What are we going to do? Because no matter what it is, we need these people. We need their resources, or else the United States will become a third world country. He's saying, even though we have been referring to them as developing nation, but the reality here is they are not developing. We just say these things so that they can feel happy, so that they can feel that, oh, we are recognizing them. But these things are lies. But these people are no longer willing to listen to us. But we need the resources, or else the United States will become a third world country, and we are going there. Europe will become a third world continent, and we are going there. So what can we do? Let's continue.
That have not yet been exploited to strip them of this developing nation status.
So first of all, before I answer that question,
now listen to this. Before you come to that man, you saw his last question. He said, what can we do after they have recognized that The United States is a liar. The United States believes in corruption. The United States believes in exploitation. The United States is not a nation to help them after they have recognized this. And after, we have been referred to that as, developing nation, or they are doing this, right? He is saying, what can we do if we are creating new policy so that we can take away that status of a developing nation, but let them in their mind, psychologically, let them be slaves. Like mentally, they should still think like a slave, because we do not want to take away that status of a developing nation. So what they are trying to say, the status of a developing nation is actually false. In fact, it's wrong. What he's trying to say, that status developing nation, if we think that yes, because the US or the West have recognized that we are developing, it's delusional. We are hallucinating. That's what he's trying to say. And then he's saying, even with the new policy, that's what he's trying to say. With the new policy, right, we should still put Africa in a position of a developing nation. It should not be a developed nation, but it should be developing nation. Even as our new policy that we are coming off with, it should not be a policy of global interest, mutual interest. We should strangle them, and it should still be in a position of a developing nation. Ever. So he's trying to make it clear to them that if you are coming with your suggestion, just make sure your idea should always put Africa in a space of a developing nation, not developed nation or developed continent, but developing. Because in our case, they will feel that they are making progress, because in their mind, development is something, like ongoing. If it is ongoing, why they can refer to the United States as a developing nation, but they always say developed nation. If it is ongoing, why can't they refer to Europe as developing, nations? But they always say developed nation. So that's where he's coming from. We cannot put them in a position where they can develop. We should always put them in a position where they can think that development is something ongoing. You understand? If it is something ongoing, then the US shouldn't be called developed nation, ED. It should be called PING, ING. So you see, when these people speak, you have to be attentive to listen to them. So you see why they are sitting in there, because this is a foreign relations committee. While they are sitting in there brainstorming, they are saying, even though we are brainstorming, trying to bring new ideas to continue to explore Africa, let's make sure that they are where we put them, they should be there. You heard it, right? Let's continue here. That's why when I heard other people reporting, I wanted to get the beginning of these things, like the root, what was said in there. And I was able to come across it to really understand. Let's continue here.
Question. I do want to thank you and commend you, Senator Young. I would say the most important thing that we've been able to do is to understand that the high ground, the strategic high ground that is necessary for us to continue to command is in technology. And I don't think we would be able to do this. You taught me a lot. I've tried to extend that, not only what we're doing domestically, but internationally with partners.
All right, so in there, he acknowledged. So first of all, he's saying, let me acknowledge, first of all, I'm not going to play a blind ear to the progress that we have made in the past about exploiting Africa. So he laid that premise first. So I recognize that what we have done over the year, our lawmakers and those that came before us, the framework that they lay to exploit Africa, even though at this time, Africans are waking up, but the framework that they lay, for us before we came, we should recognize that the form of technology they left for us, that we came in, we took power and we saw it and we were able to utilize those policies. We should recognize that. We're not going to throw that away, even though we are coming out to find new direction, right, on how to continue to explore Africa. We cannot forget our ancestors. We cannot forget our forefather. Oh yes, only African people can forget their forefather. How many of you know Nkrumah? How many of you know Nkrumah? How many of you know Malcolm X? How many of you know Marco Garvey, Amika Cabral, Thomas Sankara, Patrick Lumumba? I mean, the list go on. How many of you know those people? How many of you will discuss the African problem to point at those people as solution? How many of you will say, we thank God or we thank the spirit of Nkrumah, of Thomas Sankara, or Patrick Lumumba? How many of you will call those people and say, as we continue, we should look at the framework? Few. But you see, this is a committee of the U.S. Congress. And they are not saying what their forefather did was wrong, but they are saying it was great. And they are hearing to them what they put in place, the policy they put in place. And to exploit Africans, they call it technology. To take advantage of other people, they call it the technology. Now, they are using metaphor. So when they say technology, they're not talking about you come and sit on it, you use computer, you use, they know. It's metaphor they are using. They're not going to sit here and say, oh, what our forefather did to exploit Africans, to kill, how to call it, Patrick Lumumba, to kill Thomas Sankara, to kill Amika Cabral, that they wanted to kill Nkrumah. They're not going to say it that way. They're going to say technology. Because you have to understand the context in which these people are sitting. You have to understand the environment. You have to understand the community from where they are coming from. You have to understand the forum in which they are discussing. So when they say technology, they're not talking about using technology to go man. No, they are saying mechanism they put in place. Let's continue.
Partners. It is a hugely consequential area that we need to do more on. And I just thank you for your leadership.
Now, after he praised them, now he says, right, as I'm going to interpret it, now, what he's trying to say now, being that I have recognized them, right, going forward, we have huge tasks to do. We have things on our hands to do, and I just want to put that forward. We have thinking. We have to brainstorm. I want to put that forward because the task at hand is not easy. Maybe our forefather at that time, they found it easy. But in this current time, we are not going to find it easy. So I'm just putting that forward. Like he said, I'm just laying the premise. I'm just putting that forward for us to understand as we are brainstorming on how to continue to explore Africa. So he's responding to the senator, the so-called devilish senator, Tor Young. He's telling him it's not going to be easy. I'm just letting you to know it is not an easy task. That you think how our forefather did it so easy, that's how we're going to find it easy. Because why? At the time of our forefather, we never had other superpower like China. We never had other superpower like Russia. So it was easy. But now, these African nations, because it is hard to fight China right now. It is hard to fight Russia. And these African nations are going to them. So I'm just letting you know it's not going to be an easy task that you think we're just going to run with. Let's continue here. We're breaking it down for them. And we're doing this, again, not because we want to come and sit here, but we're just trying to let the so-called Negro P African leaders, when they sit on the African continent and don't know how to collaborate with their African brothers and sisters to discuss the African issues, these people are sitting down in their Congress and discussing the American issues, what benefit their nation. And that's why we're bringing these things out, to also educate them that these are the kind of things these people are planning for you. So stop being a slave. Stop being a neo-colonialist. Stop being a puppet. Stop being obedient.
On this, you said it perfectly. I would say this: you can't have it both ways. You can't demand to be a great power and then in certain circumstances say, oh, I'm just a developing country. We have sought to reform certain issues in the multilateral development banks and the international financial.
Now, even as they sat there or they said there, right? They know that what they have been doing is wrong. You heard what he said. We need to read. They know that the World Bank, right? The IMF, the policies have been bad because they themselves created the policy. Look, the policy was not created by the money, by the bank, the building. No. The building is being operated by human beings. And these are the human beings that created the policy. So what he's trying to say here is the policies of the World Bank that we created have never benefited these nations that we call third world countries, that we call developing nations. So we have to reform it, we have to check it, because these nations have come to realize that the World Bank are the problem to their development, to their freedom. And most of these nations are now saying no to the World Bank. They don't want loan. So we have to reform it. So do you see how these people are sitting down discussing their interests? But it baffles me that on the African continent, we hate each other. We hate nations. We hate African leaders who are doing the right thing. And African leaders who want to continue to be puppets, they are the ones hating African leaders who want to do the right thing. How can Tinubu go and put sanction on Niger? Really? When these leaders are fighting for the right thing? And then Tinubu go put sanction on Niger? Tinubu go stop their electricity for receiving current? Are you mad? And here are these people sitting here disgusting that, okay, our forefather, the policy that came out of the World Bank, now in our time is affecting us. So what can we do to change some of the things, to reform? He's not even saying to stop it. He's not saying to cancel it, but he said to reform. So what they are going to do, they are just going in our policy and change some words. But it will still be exploitative. So what can we do to reform the IMF, the World Bank, so that we can get back Africa, so that we can get back these leaders, so that they can think that we have gone and reformed it? Because one recent one they just did was to create a taxation system like the way they exploit citizens in the US. Because how can you work? Your paycheck, they take a tax. They already take a tax from your paycheck. For medical, for social security, for unemployment. Then if you go to the store, you pay a tax again for unemployment. You pay tax again for different things. You took a tax from a paycheck, and then I'll go do purchase, then I'll pay tax again. So they created a same taxation system to send it to Africa or to those third world or to those developing nations, so that those nations can pay back the so-called loan that they gave to those African leaders who did nothing in those countries. If I come and borrow a loan from you for a business, I expect that business to pay back the loan, but not to go exploit people, to take money from them to come and pay back a loan that I took from you to do a business. That's why I made America one of the biggest scammer in the world. And that's Jared. That's what Jefferson said. He said, American democracy, American Congress legalized mass corruption. I didn't say, I'm just reacting to the obvious that was said. So African leaders, you see what these people are doing. You Nana, you Tinubu, you are William Ruto.
Institutions. We need more help along the road. My biggest concern, Senator, is not that China's not providing resources globally. They do, but
now you listen. You see why they are sitting in their Congress. Now, as we've been saying that you already know, this whole issue about China is doing exploiting Africa, Russia is. Who is the U.S. to talk about exploitation? No, let's ask this question. Who is the U.S. to talk about exploitation? When the U.S. is the #1 exploitive nation or exploitative nation in the world, who is EU to talk about exploitation? To talk about corruption, to talk about violation against human rights? We've been saying these things. It's not because China is doing the wrong thing or doing bad to Africa, but it's because the U.S. is a nation that can't compete. United States does not know how to compete. Look, we said these things. Any nation that took part in the colonization, in the exploitation, in the recolonization, in the enslavement, these are nations that know nothing about competition. Because their empire was never built on competition. Their empire was never built on global mutual benefit or cooperation. It was based on looting. It was based on exploitation. It was based on killing. It was based on genocide. So how can these people talk about competition? They don't know what they call competition. They don't compete. It was based on oppression. That's why they put sanction on you. When you tell them, no, your policy is not good. When you tell them, review your policy, because we really is not in the benefit of our national interest. So go back and review your policy. What they do? They put sanction on you. Like he said, we need to reform the World Bank. Let's continue here.
but they're outside of these institutions. Actually, they're doing it in bilateral contexts where they can extract a quid pro quo. They're doing it outside of the appropriate mechanisms that
now, one of the things he mentioned down there, he said that China is not doing a bad thing. And he said the reason why, I'm going to paraphrase it or make you to understand, the reason why China is succeeding in Africa is because China is operating outside of our policy. China, he's actually confessing. He said China is doing the right thing. China is not going in to sanction anyone, to manipulate anybody's election. China is not going in to kill anyone, to plan the assassination of African leaders or those nation leaders. China is not doing that. China went in with their policy and the people review the Chinese policy. And if the people see that the Chinese policy is not going to tell China, no, we don't need it, China go by and review a policy or rewrite a policy to come by. China don't put, how they call it, sanction. China don't go and lobby for other nations to go against those nations. So he's actually trying to say China is not doing the right thing. China is doing the right thing. China is operating differently than we are operating. Do you see what is going on? So those of you Negro P, Negro that always sit down and talk and say, oh, the Chinese are doing this. Now, let me say this. Am I saying the Chinese are doing the right thing? No. Am I saying the Chinese are not exploiting Africa? No. My point here is, if African leaders sit down and China go and exploit Africa, China go and take advantage of them, right? Then it will be the cause of Africans. Because what their committee, foreign policy committee hearing is saying here is that the Chinese don't put sanction on people if African terrorists say no. The Chinese don't go and plot coup if African terrorists no. Now you understand, I will just leave it like that. But I know the Chinese are doing some things in Africa, right? But we blame those African leaders now who are doing it. Unlike the US, we will blame the US. Because these foreign Western nations are the people supporting ammunition or terrorism or proxy war in Africa, and that's how we blame them. That is why I went deeply to find the root of this video. Because I wanted to see what was said. Because I knew things were said in that video.
Allow for a degree of transparency, which we think are essential. And so I think just simply making the case more in international financial institutions about the challenges this presents. That's the World Bank, that's the EBRD, that's the Asian Development Bank. This is an essential fight that we need to, frankly, raise the awareness on more substantially.
Well, we have a role.
In his closing argument right now, he just stated that, he just agreed that the IMF, the World Bank, and other lending or financial institutions, right, are corrupt, have now been fair. That is what exactly he's trying to say here. So they know that these institutions have never, ever been fair. They have never been fair to the nation they call developing nation.
To play there as to, of course, all our diplomats. So we'll continue to focus on this important area. With respect to technology, most especially our movement towards green energy, we need critical minerals. I'm glad it's something you brought up.
No. You listen to what he said. This is the senator. This is Tor Young. You heard him. What he's trying to say here, right? Everything we are discussing here is all about critical mineral. You heard it. Everything we are discussing here, folks, is all about critical mineral. It is not about Africa. It is not about African people. It is not about human rights. It is not about how we need to empower them. It is not about factory. It is not about going there and working with them. It is not about cooperation. What we're discussing here is about critical mineral. Let's continue.
In your opening comments, if we can't get them through our deep sea beds by ratifying the laws, the Sea Treaty, which looks to be a challenge based on current circumstances, then we.
I will post this video, right? But I want to explain it critically. You heard what he said. Based on current event, right? We are facing challenges of this foreign policy. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? The slaves are waking up. The slaves are waking up. So it is a challenge.
We should look to Africa, which is where the preponderance of these minerals are.
Okay. We should look at Africa, which is where these minerals are. The scramble for Africa. We should look at Africa, which is where these minerals are. But let me ask this question, Mr. Devil. Let me ask this question to you, Mr. Devil, Mr. Demon. When should you look at Africa? Because you've been looking at Africa since the 1600s. You've been looking at Africa since the 1600s. It's today that you want to look at Africa? So when you say, let's look at Africa, is an honest statement. Because you've been looking at Africa. You enslave Africans. You colonize Africans. You chop their hand. You kill their leader. You suppress, oppress them. For centuries upon centuries. So what are you talking about? We need to look at Africa. Let's look at Africa. You've been looking at Africa negatively. Because you've been exploiting Africa from times before even you were born. And when you were born, that legacy was passed on to you. That's what makes you a demon, a devil. To make that statement, we need to look at Africa. Let's continue here.
How can we help foster the public-private partnerships, bringing American capital and expertise and standards to Africa so that we can keep exploiting, so that we can exploring.
All right, folks, you heard it. That was not slaughtering. He was not slaughtering. No. Something does not hitch in his throat. No. Nothing hitch in his throat. You heard him. How can we carry our expertise, our economists, our missionary, so that we can keep exploiting Africa? And he's like, So he knew that I have said the word, that which I was not supposed to say. I just said it. I should have said it in a way that these Negro will not understand. But now I just said it. Now it's hard for me to take it back. So that's why you saw him going like, If to say he swallowed a boom. If to say he swallowed a boom that he's in his throat, and he's like, exploring Africa. No, let me take it back.
To Africa so that we can keep exploiting, so that we can, how can we help foster the public-private partnerships, bringing American capital and expertise and standards to Africa so that we can keep exploiting, so that we can, exploring where we.
So you heard it. You heard it clear. First of all, how can we foster public partnership whatsoever? These are words, first of all, we have heard. This idiot, this demon, this devil, his father said the same thing about public partnership. His grandfather said the same thing about public partnership. And then he's here talking about public partnership. So when will public partnership, American public partnership, when will Washington, D.C. public partnership work in Africa? Never. Never. And he knows that they have been exploiting Africa. They have been taking advantage of Africa. They have been suppressing and oppressing Africans. And that is why the spirit of our ancestor, folks, what he said down there, it was the spirit that arrested him. Our ancestor arrested him. Our forefather arrested him to say the true thing to come from his mouth. And then he said in the acting that he swallowed a bone that hitched in his throat. The missionary of 1884 Berlin Conference, they were European expertise who went and lied to our people. Your forefathers were expertise. They were experts who went and lied to our people about slavery and they enslaved our people. Your forefathers were expertise who went and lied to our people and they colonized our continent. Your forefathers were expertise who wanted to kill Nkrumah, who killed Thomas Sankara, who killed Patrick Lumumba, who killed Amilcar Cabral. Again, in this current generation, not even your forefather, you yourself, you were part of the demise of Libya. You killed Gaddafi. You were expertise. It were expertise that went and killed Gaddafi. So, any expertise from the US, from Europe, from NATO nation, we do not trust them on the African continent. They are not expertise. They will never be expertise. They will be chaos. They will be demons. They will be devil. We will not believe you. So you can bring your expertise from whatsoever. We just gave you history in 1 minute. Your forefather they were expertise that enslaved Africans. Your grandfather, your great-grandfather were expertise that colonized Africans. They were expertise that killed Patrick Lumumba. They were expertise that killed Thomas Sankara. They were expertise that killed Amilcar Cabral. The many of them. And in this current time, you were part of the expertise that destroyed Libya. So there is no American expertise that will go on the African continent for any good thing. And you just said it. What can we do? We need American expertise. We need European expertise so that we can continue to explore Africa. And when you said it, you said this discussion is based on a critical analysis of exploiting the African resources. That's what you said. You said that committee you had, it was based on the analysis, the critical analysis and discussion of getting critical mineral. So how can you come and say we need American expertise to go help Africans? We need America or expertise to go free Africa. No. Because you are lying, and that's what our forefathers said. You are lying, you are a liar, you are a demon, you are a deceiver. The true word will come from your mouth, and that's why he said we need Americans. So he just said it. They need American expertise. They need European expertise to go to Africa to continue to exploit Africa. That's what you said. It never came from my mouth, or it did not come from my mouth. You said American expertise, European expertise will be sent to Africa to continue to exploit Africa.
We can get these minerals.
So if you look at like a balance sheet of the top 40 trace elements and minerals that are necessary for batteries or for semiconductors, the vast lion's share of those supplies are now controlled by China. And we start behind the 8 ball. We've got to, we were late understanding that while we were playing a globalized game, the Chinese were basically cornering markets. Now
So you heard it. Why we, America, we are playing a global game now. For those of you empty-headed Negro, when these white folks speak and you taking it wrong with it, they just told you there is nothing that global benefit. You know what he said? While we were busy playing a global benefit game, it's a game. While we were busy playing a global benefit game, because that was their strategy, that was their foreign policy they came up with. China was on the other hand doing XYZ. Oh, not only that. What did he say? Battery around cars. that build their aircraft, their military equipment, weapons, how they call it thing, what they think here that they have, the weapon that they have, mass weapon, mass destruction, nuclear weapon, very good, right? The resources that, because the resources that build a nuclear weapon is from Africa. So he's trying to lay all these analysis down, right? He's saying, so now while we were playing the global game, the global scheme, that the war is a global community, he just said it was a game, it was a scam. The war is not a global community. While we were playing the scheme of global community, China was busy doing other stuff behind the scene, and now China control those areas of mineral that we use to build our battery, our factory, our cars, our machine, our technology, our nuclear weapon. China have taken those things. You heard it. So now you know China is not a problem. Russia is not a problem. Now you know. Now you know the reason they are fighting Russia. Now you know the reason they wanted to fight Taiwan. I mean, they wanted to fight China through Taiwan. Just how they used Ukraine, they are fighting Russia. They wanted to use Taiwan to fight China. All because Africa. All because Africa. You see, these people keep talking about mineral, critical this, critical that, critical. So listen, this whole committee hearing was all about Africa. Do you see how important you are, Africa? Do you see how you control the war, Africa? Do you see how in a second you can make America a tier one nation, Africa? Do you see how in a blink of an eye you can make Europe a tier one continent, Africa? Why do you want to continue being slave? Why do you want to continue being obedient to the colonizer, to the enslaver, to the oppressor? Why? Why don't you know your importance? Why? Why do you always want to be called developed continent? I mean, developing continent, developing nation, when you are not, and they just say, hey, here. Even though they're calling you developing, but you're not developing. Why? Why do you always want to be defined by these nations, by these Europeans, by these colonizers, these demons, this devil? Why? Why take things that belong to you and willingly give it to someone when you have the power to do it yourself? Why? Is it not enough? Tinubu, is it not enough? Nana Akufo-Addo, is it not enough? William Ruto, is it not enough? Alassane, Cote d'Ivoire, is it not enough? Look at this demon, look at this devil, the kind of things that they are planning against you. Look at what they are planning against you. Look at the kind of mindset they got against you.
Responded with a number of arrangements with specific countries. We have a critical minerals agreement with Japan, with Australia. We've worked with other countries in Africa. The Lobita Corridor will help us in this context. I would simply say this is an area, these mines are often dirty. The processing is challenging. It's going to take resourcing. We have to do this with allies and partners more. And frankly, we've got to scour the globe. And it won't be just Africa, Senator. It's Mongolia.
Yes.
It's countries in Southeast Asia. And it will be our intent to continue to prosecute this.
One last point I think it's important to make, because I did not support the Inflation Reduction Act, but the reason we pursued the Chips and Science Act, and a handful of Republican colleagues joined me on that effort, was in part for purposes of economic resiliency. The Inflation Reduction Act took the opposite approach. We've become far more dependent on these upstream critical inputs, and that was never, I think, seriously wrestled with before we took this approach to mitigating climate change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
So that's the plan of the demons, the plans of the devil, the plan of the deceiver. Did you see that? That's it. These people continue to bring their attitude out because of the Shahid nation. In recent time, have you seen how back-to-back we are discussing the United States Congress? Have you seen how back-to-back these people are identifying themselves? Have you seen what is going on? So ECWA, AU. Do you see what is going on? Do you see the plot against you? Do you see what is going on? Let's see this. This is what they hate. And this is why these Negro African leaders hate. And this is why we will always support Abraham Traoré. This is why Abraham Traoré is the #1, is the best president in the world. Abraham Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, is the best president in the entire world. You like it or not, he's better than Joe Biden. The best president in the world right now is Abraham Traoré. And the most hated president in the world right now is Abraham Traoré. Now, he's being hated not because he's doing the wrong thing. He's being hated because he's doing the right thing. And he's being hated by two groups of people, the colonialists and the neo-colonialists. But if you are not in that category of the neo-colonialist or the colonialist, you will love this man. And we don't care what the neo-colonialists or the colonialists think or feel.
Leaders rise and fall, where the fate of... Imagine a continent where leaders rise and fall, where the fate of millions is determined by the decisions of a few. Now picture a leader who dares to defy the odds, who turns the tables on what we've come to expect from African governance. Just within 2 years, this country is no longer just a name on the map. It's a beacon of what could be the future of Africa. But while one leader propels his nation toward technological brilliance, others stumble in the dark, entangled in corruption and beholden to foreign powers. The question is, why are they still in power? If Traoré can be doing tremendously well in this short while, then what do we say about older leaders whom have spent years in power with little to no development? Or should we even question why these so-called leaders allow themselves to be puppets while Ibrahim Traoré carves a new path for his people? As we dive deeper, let me ask you this. What does it take for a foreign government to take an African nation seriously? Is it the ability to launch a satellite into space, or the will to sever ties with those who threaten your sovereignty? When Mali expelled the Swedish ambassador, the world was stunned. But what's even more shocking is why this action was necessary. The Ukrainian military intelligence admitted to arming the Tuareg terrorists, leading to the tragic death of Malian soldiers. Can you imagine the outrage, the betrayal? And yet, this is the reality many African countries face: outside forces meddling in their affairs with devastating consequences. While Mali boldly cuts off those who wrong them, Burkina Faso is taking its destiny into its own hands. Under Traoré's leadership, the country is about to launch its second satellite, Burkina SAT-2. This isn't just about national pride, it's about survival. Imagine a satellite that can track every movement across the country, that can forecast the weather with pinpoint accuracy, helping farmers to know exactly when to plant their crops. This kind of technology is what we usually associate with the West, with countries like the United States or China. But now, it's happening in Burkina Faso. How did they do it? And more importantly, why aren't other African nations following suit? You will be shocked with what is happening in Nigeria right now, or is it the bad governance eating up in Kenya? Just to mention few are all examples of failed leadership. While Traoré rejects luxury for himself and his politicians, insisting they buy their own vehicles, Nigeria's leaders squander resources on lavish lifestyles, from alleged 21 million naira monthly package for each lawmaker to how 3 Nigeria presidential jets and other Nigeria government assets in Europe, UK, US, and others 6 countries being seized by a Chinese company named Zhongshan Fucheng Industrial Investment Co., Limited, amidst contractual breaches. That's China, beware. Wait, think about it. Why aren't more African leaders looking to Traoré as a model? Why are they clinging to outdated practices that only serve to weaken their nations? Does this have to do with age? Where does this leave the people? Trapped in a cycle of poverty leading to corruption. Wait. As Burkina Faso launch its satellite, other African nations must ask themselves, what are we doing wrong? Why are we still dependent on foreign aid that comes with strings attached? When Sweden threatened to cut off aid to Mali, it was a clear attempt to exert control. But Mali didn't flinch. They told the Swedish ambassador to leave, refusing to bow to pressure. This is the kind of leadership that commands respect, that forces the world to take notice. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger can be going this far, then other can also do it. I wonder a question of what the future hold for a nation that's breaking free from the mold. With Traoré at the helm, Burkina Faso is setting a precedent that others can no longer ignore. The country is moving forward not by waiting for help from outside, but by harnessing its own resources and talent. Their satellite project is just the beginning. But what about the rest of Africa? Are they ready to rise to the challenge? Or will they continue to be shackled by the chains of corruption and dependency? Picture a future where Africa is no longer at the mercy of foreign powers. A future where leaders like Traoré aren't the exception, but the norm. But for that to happen, there must be a reckoning, a moment when the people say enough is enough. When will that moment come? How long will it take for other African nations to realize that the path to true independence lies within, not in the hands of foreign benefactors? As we draw closer to the launch of Burkina SAT-2, the world watches in anticipation. But this is more than just a technological achievement. It's a statement that Africa is capable, that it has the potential to lead, not just follow. But will the rest of the continent rise to the occasion, or will they remain stuck in the shadows, letting others dictate their future? The time has come for African leaders to learn from Traoré, to embrace a vision of self-reliance and innovation. Because the truth is, the world is changing. And if Africa doesn't change with it, it risks being left behind. The satellite in Burkina Faso's sky is more than just a piece of technology. It's a symbol of what Africa can become, but only if its leaders are willing to step up, to break free from the old ways, and to chart a new course for their people. So what will it be? Will Africa rise, or will it fall? The answer lies in the hands of its leaders. And as we watch Burkina Faso take its place among the stars, the question we must all ask is, who's next?
If you are still not following us, you are probably never going to see us again. But if you are, congrats.
This is today's presentation. As you have seen, we kind of close with Abraham Traoré, just to remind people of the kind of thing he's doing and what the U.S. Congress do not want to see in that part of Africa. They hate him, not because he's doing the bad thing or the wrong thing, but they hate him because he's doing the right thing. He's doing exactly what Thomas Sankara wanted to do. And the same CIA kill him. The same CIA, okay, they kill him. All right. He's not doing the right, the wrong thing. And, and that's why they hate him for. No, he's doing the right thing. What he's doing is the same thing Patrick Lumumba wanted to do, and they killed them, right? What he's doing is the same thing in our time Gaddafi tried to do holistically for Africa. And what happened? The same United States government went and killed him. So, looking at all these things, what expect will the U.S. carry to the African continent? When the U.S. is against African experts, doesn't logically, think about this. Even if you are not a revolutionary, I'm talking about some people who will just come across this video, even if they watch for a second or the last portion. But think about this, okay? What expect with the U.S.? Because what we saw in the video, they are sitting in a committee talking about they are going to carry United States expertise, right? But think about this. What kind of expert will the U.S. carry on the African continent when the United States is against African experts? Oh, I thought the U.S. need to carry experts to the Africa so that they can meet African experts, right? So that they can work together for the benefit of Africa and the U.S. But if you can go and kill African experts, if you can be against African experts, then what kind of experts you going to take? So that means if you are against African experts, you are carrying European or Western or American experts who will meet the puppets. Experts versus puppets. Experts versus puppets. And what then happened? The puppet prevail the will of the experts. The puppet protects the policy of the experts. And that is why we are saying in this generation, no. And that is why in that video, the committee hearing that they had, they said, because they know on the African continent now, they have fewer puppets and they have many experts. And the United States experts can now work with the African experts because the expert the U.S. have, they are not expert or equipped equal to the African experts. So that is why they said it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough because we no longer have more puppets, more neo-colonialists. We have more revolutionary because even the African youth are waking up. So it's going to be tough. Our experts will not make it. Because during 1884 Berlin Conference, their experts succeeded. That they trained, that Leopold trained and said, no, when you go, don't do this, do this. They succeeded. But in this 2024, we have more experts that their experts cannot compete with. So, US, keep your experts, and we will keep our experts. Period. We don't need your expert because you have killed our experts. And you are hated and still hating our experts. If you cannot work, if your expert cannot work with our expert, like Abraham to worry, then we don't need you. We don't want you. We don't need your service. We don't need your support. We don't need your presence. Get out. That is the message for today. Peace. Subscribe. Like. Share. I love you all. That's how we do it. Peace, family.